For today's audio interview, I'm here with Sandy LeBeau, widow of former GE Peterborough worker Ron LeBeau. So, Sandy, tell me a bit about how you knew John.
Well, when Ron got sick, we found out he was sick in December, and around the first part of January of '95, John phoned me and wanted to express, how sorry he was that Ron was sick, and told me that there was a lot of cancer going through the plant, and with deceased being the end result. And he asked me if I could do it, is to make sure Ron had an autopsy, just because without an autopsy, then there was a lot of questions not being answered and that sort of thing. So we had a good talk on the phone that night, and that was the first time I'd heard of John and what he represented with the company and stuff. So, so I didn't tell Ron that was what the conversation was about, but I did have an autopsy done. And then after Ron passed away, John would contact me quite often and see how I was doing and if I'd heard anything from the company and, that kind of stuff. So John was a good part of my life with being, on my side. Ron always felt that his cancer was GE. He actually told us 5 years before he passed away that the chemicals at GE will kill him first before he'd ever retire, and 5 years later he was gone. But so I did know that it was an issue with GE, and then when John would fill in pieces of what he worked with and what he did with it and whatever, things would make sense to me. So it was very good that way.
So in either the time before or after Ron's passing, what impact do you believe that John had on achieving justice for workers injured by exposures?
Well, John had so much knowledge. Like, I don't know of anybody that would have the memory of what John did. John could tell you about locations in the plant, who worked at the plant at that time, because he was on health and safety for a long time, even quite into his early years at the plant. And, you might think, well, did so-and-so work in that part of the plant or whatever? And John could say, no, he didn't, or yes, he did. And he worked on whatever, and the chemicals that he used. And that really impressed me with John because, John was getting up into age when I got to know him. And, the older you get, the less things that you kind of remember, But he could almost read it off like a book. So he must have had a photographic memory or something, because his knowledge of the plant, the buildings, the people, the chemicals, he had, like, if you wanted to know anything, you could just ask John Ball, and he would be able to fill in this, what you were asking. But, he always felt that when he would work with health and safety and the WSIB or whatever, people would come in to check things out and tell them to, this has to be changed, that has to be changed, or whatever. And he'd say, well, yeah, it was on paper, but that's as far as it went. The company didn't do nothing about it. They didn't clean up any of the stuff that should have been cleaned up or help the guys with what they were wearing to work with different chemicals and stuff. And anyway, he really felt that the company could care less about the people. And I think with the whole thing of how WSIB ended up, like, GE never even got penalized for any of the claims that were solved. And you think, well, if somebody fell over some wires or something like that, then GE could get penalized for having those wires out there that were not in proper place, and somebody got hurt over it. Well, then they get penalized. But then somebody dies and they don't get penalized. That just really didn't make sense to me at all. I don't think it did to John either. He felt that they should have been accountable for the deaths that went on in there, and especially when they had write-ups and stuff to clean up sections and that sort of thing. But, yeah. Is there anything else?
No. Sandy, it's been wonderful getting the chance to speak with you. Thank you so much for your time.